It started on an unusually quiet Tuesday afternoon. The kind where the sun hangs just a little lower in the sky and everything feels too still, like the calm before a storm. I was working from home, hunched over my laptop at the kitchen table, when my 13-year-old son, Noah, came bounding into the room with his usual whirlwind energy. "Mom," he said, his face lit with a mischievous kind of pride, "the Wi-Fi was lagging so I reset the router." I barely looked up. "That's fine, sweetie. Thanks." It seemed harmless enough. We'd had our share of spotty internet lately. I figured a quick reboot would fix things and I could get back to answering client emails without delay. What I didn't expect was for the doorbell to ring not 5 minutes later, 3 sharp, angry chimes like someone was punching the button with their entire palm. I opened the door to find Karen. Now, everyone in the neighborhood just calls her that. She's the president of the WA, wears those oversized sunglasses even when it's cloudy, and somehow always knows what everyone else is doing. When your recycling bins go out, if your grass is half an inch too long, or whether your kids were skateboarding past curfew. She once knocked on my door because our garden gnome was too whimsical for the community aesthetic. Today, she looked especially incensed. "Good afternoon," I said, feigning politeness. "Did your son just reset the Wi-Fi?" She snapped, without even bothering with a greeting. I blinked. "Excuse me. The Wi-Fi. The shared network for the WA camera system. It just went down. Completely. We've lost access to every camera feed." I was still trying to process what she was saying. WA camera system. Shared network. We're on a shared network. I asked slowly, not even trying to hide my confusion. Karen huffed and pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. "Of course we are. It's how we keep the community safe. All outdoor cameras are linked through a mesh Wi-Fi system, yours included." "Wait," I said, raising a hand. "Are you telling me you're connected to our router?" She looked at me like I had just asked whether grass needed sunlight. "Yes. The board approved it last year. You must have gotten the letter." "I never agreed to that," I replied. "Well, it was in the newsletter. Page 6. Bottom corner." I almost laughed, but she didn't look like she was joking. My son had reset the router because Fortnite was lagging, and now Karen was acting like he had taken down the entire Department of Homeland Security. She started rambling about how important the neighborhood surveillance was, how there had been suspicious activity lately, and how this was a serious breach of protocol. Then she crossed a line. "I'm going to have to file an official complaint," she said, stepping forward. "This level of negligence is unacceptable. Children shouldn't be allowed to tamper with community infrastructure." I stepped in front of the door, blocking her from entering. "With all due respect," I said, "this is our home. That router belongs to us. If you've been piggybacking off our Wi-Fi without even asking for permission, that's not community infrastructure. That's overreach." Her jaw tightened. She clearly wasn't used to being told no. "You're endangering everyone," she said, her voice rising. "Those cameras are vital. And besides, if you had nothing to hide, why would you mind a little oversight?" That was it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. But I met her gaze and said very clearly, "We'll be securing our network moving forward. You won't have access again." She stormed off, muttering something under her breath about irresponsible parenting. I closed the door, still stunned, and turned to Noah, who had been watching the whole thing from the stairs. "What was that about?" he asked. "She was using our Wi-Fi to run some sort of neighborhood surveillance system," I explained. "You cutting the connection took it all down." He laughed. Oops. Later that night, I couldn't shake a weird feeling. Why was Karen so upset? What kind of suspicious activity was she referring to? And how deep did this so-called surveillance go? Out of curiosity, I checked the router logs. It was something I usually wouldn't bother with, but something about the day had set me on edge. What I found left me staring at the screen in disbelief. There were multiple unknown devices connected to our network, devices labeled with serial numbers, not names. Some had been online for weeks. One of them had data usage in the terabytes. I called my brother, who's a network security specialist. He walked me through the logs and confirmed my suspicion. At least 3 of the connected devices were IP cameras. Remote access enabled. Someone had been streaming video from our neighborhood nonstop. They're using your bandwidth to spy on people, he said. That's not just unethical. That could be illegal. I had to sit down. The kicker. One of the camera streams had been installed in the alley between our house and Karen's. It had a full view of our backyard, where Noah played, where we barbecued, where I did yoga on Sunday mornings. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about Karen's smugness, how she had brushed off my questions like I was the problem. It didn't feel like simple overreach anymore. It felt personal, purposeful. The next morning, I talked to a few neighbors. Discreetly. None of them knew about the shared network. None had given permission for their home cameras to be connected. And one of them, an older man who lived a few doors down, said something that sent a chill through me. She said there was a break-in last month. But I didn't see any police. Just her and a guy in a van checking wires. There had been no break-in. No police report. Nothing in the neighborhood app. Just Karen, quietly wiring cameras into homes under the guise of safety. And then it hit me. Noah had recently installed an old security camera in our front yard, leftover from a school robotics project. It wasn't connected to the WA system. It wasn't fancy. But it was pointed toward the street, and it recorded everything. Including, I realized, Karen's weekly walks. Always around 8 p.m. Always with a tablet in hand. Sometimes stopping at curbs and fiddling with things near mailboxes or utility poles. I pulled up the footage. And that's when I saw her do it. She had walked right up to our side gate. Looked around. Then reached inside her purse and placed something small, on top of our fence post. She hadn't seen the camera. But we had the proof. And suddenly, I understood her panic when the Wi-Fi went down. She wasn't just losing access to cameras. She was losing control. Sure. Here's an expanded version of part 2 in about 1,000 words, continuing the story naturally from the title. The next morning was unusually quiet for a Saturday. No screaming, no barking orders from across the fence, and definitely no texts from Karen about the unsanctioned sprinkler usage, or suspicious mail deliveries. I sipped my coffee with a cautious optimism, but I knew better than to think the storm had passed. Especially since my son, Leo, had managed to reset the entire Wi-Fi system for our neighborhood's shared WAN network the previous afternoon. Karen had screamed so loud when she lost connection mid-virtual meeting that 2 dogs in the cul-de-sac started howling. Leo, who had learned enough about networking to lock her out of the admin panel entirely, sat back in triumph as I tried not to laugh too hard. At the sight of her stomping around her yard with her tablet held high like it was a holy relic searching for divine signal. But that wasn't even the real chaos. Later that night, around 11:30 p.m., I noticed movement on our porch camera. It was Karen, again. Clad in what I can only describe as a satin bathrobe, slippers, and fury, she was peeking around the edges of our porch, clearly trying to find the router box. I had to hand it to her. Dedication like that would have made her an asset to literally any job not involving interpersonal skills. I waited until she was crouched near the bushes, muttering to herself, and then flicked on the porch light. She shrieked, tumbled backward into the hydrangeas, and scrambled to her feet with a speed that defied both her age and orthopedic footwear. I opened the door slowly, keeping my expression as neutral as I could. Evening, Karen. Looking for something. She sputtered. I was just checking your wiring. It looked like a fire hazard from the street. Of course. Because your WA duties include stealth inspections after bedtime, right? Her eyes narrowed into tiny slits. I know your son messed with the Wi-Fi. And I'm calling an emergency board meeting. This is a cybersecurity violation. You mean he fixed it? It was open access. Anyone could have hijacked it. Karen's jaw clenched so tightly I thought her veneers might crack. She stormed off without another word. I closed the door with a sigh. We're going to hear about this at least 10 times tomorrow. Leo grinned from the kitchen, earbuds dangling. Worth it. But what we didn't realize at the time was that Karen had more to worry about than just the Wi-Fi. See, our neighborhood had recently become a target for package thieves. Multiple homes had reported missing Amazon deliveries, random tampering with mailboxes, and even cars getting rummaged through. So I had installed a few discrete trail cameras, not just on my property, but with my neighbor's permission as well, high resolution, motion triggered, and night vision equipped. The data fed into a cloud storage I checked weekly. Leo, ever the tech-savvy teenager, had been helping me manage the files. He liked going through them, checking for animals, weird people, or anything that didn't belong. It was his urban safari, as he called it. The day after the Wi-Fi debacle, Leo came running downstairs, pale and speechless, clutching his tablet. "You're not going to believe what I found," he said, breathless. "You need to see this." He opened a video clip from 2 nights ago. Karen, at 2:12 a.m. dressed in dark athletic wear, wearing gloves. Creeping up to our next-door neighbor's porch. She reached under their mat, pulled out a package, examined the label, and then quietly tucked it under her own coat. Another video, this time from a different angle. Karen, same night, rifling through the unlocked mailbox at the corner. "She's the porch pirate," Leo whispered. I felt a wave of disbelief. Karen, the self-righteous guardian of the HOA covenants, lecturing people about grass length and recycling bins, was stealing from her neighbors. The irony was suffocating. I spent the next hour going through footage with Leo, documenting every instance. 4 packages. 2 mailboxes. 1 extremely suspicious exchange with a man in a red pickup who passed something through her car window. It was all there. I called Mark, the WA president, a reasonable guy, and no fan of Karen's. I explained the situation and sent over the clips. He didn't respond right away, which I expected. It was a lot to take in. But 20 minutes later, he called back. "Don't do anything yet," he said. "Let me handle this." The following afternoon, Mark called an official emergency WA board meeting at Karen's house. Curious, Leo and I walked over. It felt like the entire block had shown up, murmuring and casting glances. Karen stood at her front door, arms folded, lips tight. "Let's keep this civil," she snapped. Mark nodded and held up a USB stick. "Karen, we have footage. Multiple angles. Multiple dates. You've been tampering with private property, which violates not just WA bylaws, but federal law." Karen's face paled. I was doing security patrols. Like a citizen's watch. Mark didn't even blink. "You're on tape removing packages from porches and stealing mail. That's a felony. You can either step down from the WA and return the stolen property, or we call the authorities." Karen looked around. Everyone was staring at her. Judging her. Even the neighbors she'd browbeat into silence were standing taller now, vindicated. Her voice cracked. "Fine. I resign. But you'll regret this. I was trying to protect this neighborhood by stealing from it," someone muttered. And just like that, the WA Karen was dethroned. Over the next few days, things changed fast. Packages stopped going missing. Neighbors actually smiled at one another. Someone even started a neighborhood group chat that wasn't moderated by Karen's paranoid ramblings. Leo got a thank you gift basket from the community, mostly snacks and a gift card for tech stuff. As for Karen, she kept a low profile. Her house went up for sale within 2 weeks. Sometimes I still see her pacing her backyard, yelling into a headset. But her reign over the Wi-Fi, the WA, and everyone's peace of mind. It was over. And all it took was a teenage boy, a router reboot, and a few cameras she never saw coming.